Hey, J.A., I mean, Celtics basketball seems to be responding when the pressure's on, when their back's against the wall. Before last night, they hadn't lost consecutive games all playoffs. I don't think they lost consecutive games that they tried to win since January. So that sometimes things are a cliche because they're true. The hardest thing to do is to close out a team on the road. How do you see the rest of this series going? Do you see this going back to a winner take all
See
game?
things going. Has anyone been successful in trying to forecast the
No,
way this
no,
series has gone?
not at all. Not this series, no.
So the entirety of possibilities, and there's not a whole wide range left. Really, three options, I guess. One thing you mentioned, the difficulty in closing out teams on the road. The Warriors have yet to do so this year. They've had a chance in each of the three previous series, and they're 0 for 3 when trying to end the series on the road. So that's sitting there. But again, we've seen a lot of things in the past haven't held true in this series. The Warriors hadn't lost a home game until this series in these playoffs. The Celtics hadn't lost back-to-back games in these playoffs until Game 4 last night. The hard thing about it is that you have a lot of variance in the era of three-point shooting, right? And this is a weird subset of that era because it used to be that you basically look at the box score after the game and it's really simple. The team that made the most three-point shots won the game. That's what basketball has been reduced to in a lot of ways. In this series, it's really been about the timing of the three-pointers. And that's why there's been so much variance because as teams are so dependent on the three-pointer, that's not a reliable shot. It's going to come and go. And last night, the Celtics missed their first 12 three-point attempts, and then they made 8 in a row, and they come all the way back from that one-time 16-point deficit to take the lead in the third quarter. And then they started to go cold again from three-pointer. One reason why the Warriors have a lead, it's not been their three-point shooting that's gotten them this far. It's their ability to have a variety of shots and to get to the basket and to take advantage of whenever Robert Williams is out to score inside.
You know, Jay, you've watched a lot of NBA finals and finalists. I'm wondering, who do the Celtics remind you of? Do they remind you of any kind of team in the finals, like a young team? They're not quite Oklahoma City in 2012.
A little bit. That's one thing I'm thinking, because remember, Oklahoma City won the first game of that series, and they proceeded to lose the next 4. And so it looked like, oh, okay, this was their first finals for a lot of the guys on that team. And they were up to the challenge in the first game. And then as it went on, I'll never forget, someone with Oklahoma City told me as they got into like game 4 and they could see the series getting away from them. And he said, the stage is a little bit too big for them. The lights are a little too bright for this team at that time. Obviously, Kevin Durant went on to become an all-time great finals performer. But at that time, he wasn't ready. So I see a little bit of that in these Celtics. Really, though, I see more of the 2002 Sacramento Kings. And I was just hearing your discussion about which is the better team. And the 2002 Kings were the better team than the Los Angeles Lakers that year. They finished with a better record during the regular season. They were deeper 1 through 9 than the Lakers, but the Lakers had the 2 best players on the court. You could argue that the Warriors have had the 2 best players on the court, and those 2 have been Steph Curry and Andrew Wiggins throughout the course of this series. And the Lakers had the experience factor. And I think you are starting to see that come into play. So it doesn't remind me of another finals matchup so much as it reminds me of the 2002 Western Conference Finals, in which the Kings had a better roster, but the Lakers ultimately proved to be superior. And, you know, I'm differentiating between better team and the superior team. And the intangibles, by the way, come into play when you're talking about who's superior.
You do know, hey, if your email is up there, you're making a very triggering comment to the people of Sacramento who still are upset. What was that, Game 6? Is that Game 6 there?
Fouls, yeah, but you know, they still had Game 7 at home, and they missed like a dozen free throws and all the other stuff. So I never, ever want to hear about the fact, oh, the referees caught. No, you had a Game 7 at home. At that point, 80% of the teams that played Game 7 at home won. It's now it's like a 50-50 proposition, which is another thing that bodes well for the Celtics, which is a reason that this series is not over in the NBA Finals. But back then, you had a Game 7 at home. I think they became the first team to lose an overtime Game 7 at home. So yeah, I never want to ever hear any of that conversation.
Speaking of conversations, this is where reputations are made and legacies are forged. Not that Steph's was ever in question. He didn't need a Finals MVP to legitimize his legacy, but the presumptive MVP, should they hold on and win, certainly does bolster it. Meanwhile, Andrew Wiggins, It's been his coming out party, much more so than a regular season All-Star selection. What do you think of what these finals so far? Again, Celtics are capable of winning these next two. They did it before against Milwaukee. But as it stands now, what have these finals done for both the reputations of Steph Curry and, as of last night, Andrew Wiggins?
It's funny because it's enhanced Curry, and I think as long as he doesn't play the way he did last night, I think if he plays the way he's played over the course of this series, I think they could even stand to lose the next two games, and it's possible he could wind up being the Finals MVP. Remember, 4 people voted for LeBron when they won it. Who's been the best player? Who's been more consistent than him in this series?
Oh, so what?
But it's funny because it could change it. But if he wins with that Game 4 there, then you know what? It reminds me of Tom Brady the year that he beat Atlanta. Because going into that, I had the feeling that nothing could alter Brady. He was set and secure. His place had been sealed. You know, nothing he could do in that game, positive or negative, was going to change how we thought about it. And then he brings the team back from a 28-3 deficit in his overtime game-winning drive.
Totally.
So it actually, and Michael Hawley, you and I discussed this before the series. I mentioned going in that if Steph Curry didn't win a game and didn't score a point, he's still in a club with LeBron, Magic, Bird, MJ. I'm leaving out somebody, I think. But those are the guys. He's in that group that's won multiple championships and multiple regular season MVPs. So he's already in that club. Again, if he didn't do a single thing in that thing, but now he could potentially add a Finals MVP to that. He also is the all-time leading three-point shooter in the history of the game. That wasn't going to change, and he has his moment. That's what he got out of these finals, though, that he didn't have was, you need that. It is a narrative, all this thing is, it's all subjective, right? So you need narrative-based moments, and he had that Game 4. He'll always have that Game 4, even if they lose this series. Again, remember, MJ, one of the great moments in the MJ story was the 63-point game that he scored against the Boston Celtics. They lost that game. They got swept in that series, and yet that's still a huge part of the MJ lore. So I think even if they lose the next two games, I think that Game 4 performance is part of the lore of Stephen Curry.
And as we go to break,
Wiggins, it shows he's able to adjust. And yes, it will change the way we think of him. Sometimes we learn we have to reevaluate people's positions, right? So, franchise player, all the expectations you might have from a number 1 overall pick, no, not that. But a guy who can play a major role on a championship team as maybe the secondary or tertiary player, hey, there's a great value in that. Ask Scottie Pippen, one of the top 75 players of all time.
Who wins on Thursday?
I don't know. Nothing has gone the way you'd expect, so just the Warriors, just because it's unexpected. To beat them 3 straight times, I don't, I think it's unexpected. So go with the unexpected.
Brother, we appreciate you. Thank you.
All right.
Hey, thanks for watching Brother from Another on YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe before you leave, and be sure to watch us 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Peacock. Appreciate you.